Hi, everybody. It's very lovely to be here in this beautiful atmosphere. And this is my first time at the Meditation Museum. I've been a friend of Jenna's for many, many years. But the last time I was in Washington was 17 years ago. Yeah, long time. Anyway, what I would love to do is just share a few thoughts, and then Sister Jenna's going to come, and I think we'll have a little bit of a conversation together. We live in an extraordinary world. 8 billion human beings, 195 countries, 6,500 spoken languages, 4,500 practiced religions. Incredible, isn't it? And I wonder, when seeing this world, seeing all the diversity in this world, seeing all the differences in our world, seeing all the incredible accelerated change in our world, how are you feeling? How are you managing this increasingly sensitive mental, emotional, and spiritual landscape? I think all of us feel a bit powerless occasionally. Is that true? Yeah. We sort of feel a victim of so many things which are happening out there. And a little while ago, I was reading something about Charles Darwin, whom we all know. He wrote a book about 160 or 70 years ago, which was revolutionary at the time, The Origin of Species. And I found it really fascinating because, in a way, he just studied change all his life. And the heart of his book is a phrase, adapt or die. And what his lifetime of research into all the species, including the human species, he realized that at times of crisis, like our world now, in times of massive change, like our world now, it's not the most intelligent who survive. It's not the strongest who survive. It's those who adapt to change. And in a way, I think this is the message for all of us, isn't it? That seeing our world just changing so rapidly, but what is the change which we really need to adapt to? And I feel really we have to reclaim our inner power. Because in one sense, we have no power over the world out there, do we? We don't. And that's why we have these feelings of helplessness and hopelessness so often. But I remember someone asked me a question many years ago, which was so simple. You know how people say things which are so simple, but they have big impact? She just said to me, what do you have control over? Do you have control over the economy, the government, all that list? No, 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 no. Your partner, your children? No. What is my sphere of influence in life? It's really my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, my behavior, my actions. And this is spirituality, isn't it? It's sort of like, I don't have power out there, but I actually have power in here. And that's what I really love about spirituality. It's really reclaiming my inner strengths. And I studied Latin at school, believe it or not. Not sure why I did. But the word core, it's the root of courage, means heart. So in a way, courage is an innate quality of the heart. To stand in my truth and, to manage things, whatever is happening, to tolerate whatever is really going on. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And many years ago, I was in Mount Abu, and I'm looking at Dr. Sylvia because she was with us there. And we were having a peace conference. Mount Abu is the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris, I think many of you know. And there was an extraordinary man there called David Ennals. And David was from the House of Lords in the UK. Lord David. Wonderful personality. And he asked me to teach him meditation. And every morning I'd go up, he was staying in this beautiful little cottage on a hill. And we'd sit at sunrise and meditate together. And he was really one of the great peace activists and human rights activists of last century. He was a phenomena. To the powerless all over the planet, he gave his life. He was an extraordinary man. And I said to him, David, you know, what really brought you into this life? And he told me this amazing story that when he was 18, he was conscripted into the British Air Force and trained for 2 weeks and dropped. This is at the end of Second World War. And he was parachuted into France in the middle of the night at midnight. And he said, just 18 years old. And he said for hours, they crawled along these, you know, how can you say, paddocks or pastures, came to those, you know, those little stone fences in Europe, those little stone fences they have. He'd come up to a fence, look over, crawl over and he said they did it for hours. He came in front of one of the stone fences and he peeked his head up and there was a German right behind who shot his shoulder off. And he said that I thought he would just lay there and he thought if I move, he's going to come around and finish me off. So he said he lay there for an hour and at dawn, the German came around to see what had happened. And as David described it, this young German man, the same age, 18 years old, was devastated he'd shot someone. He said, actually, David said, I was the one who shot and he was worse than me. You know how you feel. And David realized that he was just a young man like me. There was no difference. He just wanted a decent life. He'd been forced to come here. And he said the whole idea that someone is my enemy, something just shifted in his thinking. And that scene, in a sense, gave him a lifetime of courage to really be this incredible peace activist and human rights activist, which he was. Because I think in this world, we all need so many types of courage. Sometimes we need a physical courage to deal with our health issues. You know, so many of us have serious health issues, or one of our family's health issues. Often we need a moral courage, don't we, to do what we feel is really right, even when those around me oppose me, criticize me, disapprove. It takes a lot of courage, doesn't it? But I don't know about you, but I feel in my journey, probably the greatest courage is to really know myself, face myself, be honest with myself, and really, in a sense, have a loving relationship with myself. Because I think the ultimate spiritual courage is really to take responsibility for who I am as a person. It takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, really? I mean, it takes a lot of courage for stuff out there, but to really sit down with myself, face who I really am, and take full responsibility for who I am. And in a way, we all know that this is like our spiritual journey to do that. And I've often felt in my life, you know, when you feel uncomfortable inside, which we all do, you know, often many times a day. And I think human nature is we just want to run away from that discomfort. We try to avoid people that trigger discomfort, situations that trigger discomfort. But I think in the spiritual journey, in one way, it's like we want to look at that discomfort and go into it and understand, have the courage to face it and understand, why am I uncomfortable, you know, sitting here with myself. And I personally feel that that courage to know myself is at the heart of the spiritual journey. And in my own journey, I found that when I meditate, meditation is this extraordinary inner journey to absolutely know, realize, experience who I am. And for me, over recent years, one way that's really helped me is I've seen that there's three personalities inside of me. And I find two of them make me feel powerless, weak, ineffective. But one of them really starts to reclaim that inner sense of inner strength. And the first personality I call the I of arrogance or the I of superiority. And this is a personality that takes my whole sense of self from the labels of my body. Who am I? You know, my gender, my nationality, my religion, my color, the whole gamut of things. But what's common to all of them is that they're all temporary. They are all temporary. And when my ego is sovereign in my inner kingdom, when my ego is dominating my inner kingdom, I compare with others and I think, you know, I am better, I know more, I am right. You know, that sort of thing, my perception of reality is the right one. But when my ego is ruling and it comes into my feelings, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive, a whole gamut of emotions which make me so vulnerable and so weak. And so that's like the first personality, which, you know, is, I think, disempowers me completely. You know, so often I reflect how this deep relationship between ego and love, fundamentally, the more ego I have, the less love I experience in life, because ego makes me feel separate. Ego talks in my head that you don't belong, people don't want you. It makes you feel disconnected. And yet really it's my own ego which is creating that feeling. But I often feel my ego is the front for the second eye, which to me is the eye that really makes me powerless in this life. And that's the eye of inferiority, the eye of lack of self-respect. And this eye also takes all its sense of self from the temporary labels of my body. I compare with others and I think others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't value me, others don't respect me. And when it really comes into my feelings, I can feel hopeless about myself, inadequate, you know, unworthy, depressed. And I would say depression is, you know, a sadness. In psychology, it's a sadness that my dream to be loved and valued hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. And so what happens is that on this journey trying to find myself, often the two personalities, the ego of superiority and the ego of inferiority, make me, you know, do you know that roller coaster? I think we've all had experience of that. And as you know, the third eye is the original eye. And in a sense, this spiritual journey is this deep, deep, deep research to experience the reality of the permanent self, that I am a soul. And I've been a meditator for 50 years, and I'm still fascinated by the idea that the soul exists, but it has no size. You know, in mathematics, a point exists, but it has no length, breadth, or width. I am a soul. And I sit in the front of the brain, and the soul doesn't have any of those bodily labels whatsoever. And it just makes us all feel really close. And I feel that once I start this journey of knowing myself and learning this wonderful objectivity to sort of observe my inner world and my value, my beauty on the one hand, and the things I need to work on the other hand. So I think it automatically empowers me and gives me a sense of courage to be the person I really know I want to be. Secondly, I feel that the source of courage comes from experiencing true love. And sometimes I think the whole subtext of human life is this search for true love. And we invest our heart in relationships. You think, everyone in this room, how much have you given to the people you love, the people in your families. You give everything. But there's this huge human dilemma that no relationship is permanent. Whether it's time, whether it's change, whether it's conflict, whether it's death, the object of my love will leave me. How much insecurity does that create? How much fear does that create? How powerless does that make me? Because my anxiety around outcomes becomes so immense. And yet, I think in spirituality, we explore one relationship, the one relationship that's permanent, which is really the relationship of I, the soul, with the divine, with God. And sometimes I feel there's three sources of love in life. There's my love from the self, there's love from the divine, and love from family and friends. And I think that's the big human struggle today, isn't it? To have a constant loving feeling for myself. For God, I think a lot of people have faith in God, but whether we really feel that deep love and care and belonging in my relationship with God, I'm not sure. So my one real source of the most necessary quality in life is my family and friends. So if there's a loss, if there's a conflict, it's like my whole life goes into upheaval. What is spirituality? To me, spirituality is first developing a loving relationship with myself as a soul. And this is, I feel like, the first anchor to empower myself, that as the world swirls around me faster and faster, I put down this anchor of a clarity that I am the eternal soul. And the more I practice, that relationship gets stronger and stronger. But the second anchor is the loving relationship with the Supreme Soul. And for me, I often think that when I think of God, just as I am a soul, and you can see me sitting up here talking, I promise I won't go on too long, but you're watching a soul acting, speaking, communicating. To me, God is also a soul, a conscious soul, but does not have a body or sense organs like me. And so it's a completely different relationship. Our relationships with each other, we see each other, we talk to each other, we communicate with each other. But this concept of God is not just an intellectual idea, a belief. I'm actually communicating with a real, living, conscious soul. I'm building a relationship with that soul. And to me, this is the absolute source of inner power. That when I'm able to sit down and literally let go of my labels, you know, that sweet process of going beyond my gender and all the labels that are on the surface of the body that divide us so much. And we reach that commonality that I'm a soul. We're all souls. And actually, I'm in the realm with God too. And often I have the feeling that God is like on the FM wavelength, eternally soul conscious. When I, the soul, forget the self and I think I'm just a temporary body, I'm on the AM wavelength. I know the FM exists, but I can't tune in. I can believe, but I can't tune in. And what we want to do is really become soul aware, take myself up to that FM wavelength, become soul conscious, and build this relationship, which is a relationship through thoughts and feelings, not so much through language and sense organs, but a real living relationship. Such a source of power. And how do I communicate? It's through thoughts and feelings. And actually, I often think about this because as we're sitting here, and everyone is so sweetly silent and quiet, you know, people pop into your mind. You know, as I'm speaking, all sorts of people pop in because we have this incredible receptor that someone thinks of me, even on the other side of the world, instantly I pick it up. thoughts are instant, they're beyond time and space. So actually, I'm constantly communicating in a subtle way, in that sort of subtle way of picking up thoughts. And I also send out thoughts and people pick them up as well. So what I'm beginning to do, I can have this relationship with the divine, this connection with the divine, where it's a real connection. I'm not just sitting there believing in a concept or praying to a concept. I'm in a living, loving relationship with a real being. And in a way, I think investing in this at this time where out there just everything changes almost on a daily basis, and it threatens us. We feel, who am I in all this change? Where do I belong? And yet when I put these two anchors down, because the beauty is that the soul is permanent. I'm eternal. I always exist. I'm immortal beyond death. And the relationship with God is the one permanent relationship. And so I think that this gives me a sense of courage to be the person I want to be in my life and really step back into my spiritual power. So I want to put a bit of a pause button on myself there, because I know Sister Jenna's going to come in, but I can't see where she is. Maybe she's going to appear from here. Oh, she's at the back. Okay. But I really do feel that we're at a time where, and I often mention this, that, our spiritual practice, our regular spiritual practice is so important, because many times I feel that there's three approaches to a spiritual life. You can do it like a hobby, come along to an evening like this. I mean, it's lovely, isn't it? It's lovely to sit with a group of like a family feeling and talk about the real things of life. We can do it like a discipline where I meditate. I find many people meditate regularly today. But as soon as we stop meditating, my mind reverts to its old thinking. Or we can create like a little structure which I put into my day. It becomes like a lifestyle where I'm just practicing really to live in a state of soul consciousness and have that natural, loving relationship with the divine. And so,
thank you so much, Brother Charlie. Isn't every word that he speaks with a kind of a weight that makes you feel light? I know it sounds a little oxymoron, right? It's a weight, a depth that makes you feel light. And don't we need that now more than ever? So turn to the person and say, man, I love that brother. He is so cool. That is one cool brother, all the way from Australia, And don't you just love the accent? And I told you it's going to be right. Or to put it on, sorry. Hi, I'm back. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming out today. I love it. I think that when we have such giants in our meditation museum, it makes you such a better version of yourself when you go home and when you go back to your workplace. This is not an easy topic. We have especially invited individuals from the federal government. Many have been laid off. Some are still at work and kind of scared. Nobody really knows what's next. And so how do we prepare sometimes for the unknown, whether either I'm going to be laid off or maybe I won't be, or maybe a friend or a family member or a colleague that I've known for so long gets laid off. It still affects us, right? Help me, help us in this area and in this country right now. How do we prepare our minds for the unknown when it feels like I have no control over what's going to happen outside of this realm?
You know how life often, the greatest adversity can become the greatest blessing.
Mm.
Because in a way, I think it's, you know, our work, everything is important out there. But sometimes I feel we've invested in so much superficiality of life, you know, we're on the surface. Where can I go in these circumstances? I can only go inside. That's where my resources are. And I was remembering, actually, I was in South Africa when Nelson Mandela became the president. It's an amazing time. The whole country was having a party. 45 million having a party, that's some party, you know. And I was in Cape Town when he gave his first speech in Parliament. And I was amazed, really. I mean, you know his life, it's so well known that 27 years incarcerated, and a lot of it in solitary confinement. And he, you know, I think there's two ways you can go. You either become mad, or you become great. And, you know, he actually met Daddy Prakashmani, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris at that time. And he said in jail, he read all the scriptures. And actually, that's what really changed, because he said of himself, I mean, he was out there, you know, blowing up trains and really physically violent in protest to an absolute injustice. But he realized that he found his inner resources. He actually had the courage to claim that inner strength. And I knew a woman who was in his cabinet, an amazing woman. And she said before they would do talk in cabinet, I'm not sure if it happens in the present cabinet in America, they had silence. Nelson Mandela said, let's all sit in silence and think what's really important and invoke some power. So he found something. So his absolute adversity, being jailed for that time, and yet it made him great. Now, we can quote these great figures. We're all not Nelson Mandelas, but I found for myself often that when, you know, really the hardest things in life actually make you go to a different place to think about what's important and what I really need to do. Life is showing all of us now we have to rebuild our internal world. Yeah.
You know, I loved when Brother Charlie said, either you go mad or you get great. And for many of us, we are quite mad at this moment. You know, mad at just the fact that it just doesn't seem right, Brother Charlie. Something's off. There is a sense of a missed sense of empathy and compassion about the well-being of hardworking individuals. Okay, so we are mad, but we know there's greatness within the undercurrent of emotions that we're going through. We don't have 27 years of solitary confinement. And so we have Fox, MSNBC, CNN, BBC, ABC. Then we have our neighbors, our aunties, our uncles, our grandma, our grandpa, and there's always that one relative that will not turn off the news all day at home. Right? And so we get that kind of a side note every day. How can we steal moments? How can we grab those moments that are really our life-giving herb to stay sane and to become great?
You know, I think spirituality is finding balance, because often, you know, to be a spiritual person, we often feel we have to withdraw from responsibility in life. And if you look at the history of our world, often when people really want to engage with God and spirituality, they go into monasteries and convents and caves. But I think this present time is to create that cave in the mind, in a way, and wake up and spend time with the self in the early morning hours, because usually that is a time we all have for solitude. What I've really learned is that if I learn how to make my mind like a place where I can retreat to, because we've lost our spiritual power, we are utterly vulnerable to people, opinions, behaviors, everything. And it's just like, I often think, you know, someone says something, I hear it and it just drives my thinking. I see an inappropriate injustice. I see it, it drives my thinking. Everything is driving my thinking. It's like I'm like a slave and I bow down and say, oh world, you dominate my inner world. But what we're learning here is to be in the world, but choose what I think. And it may sound like, well, that's not an easy, and it's not an easy thing to do. But when you have those two anchors of self-realization and God, you actually decide what I want to enter my mind. And you edit out the rubbish, because each time someone behaves badly and I just dwell on it, think about it, what happens to my happiness? What happens to my well-being? Now, easy to say, I know, because our addiction is to just be driven by the external world. It drives my internal world. But in a way, what are we doing when we meditate? I'm sitting down and I'm creating the thoughts I want. And so I'm reclaiming my inner authority. And when you do that, you can be in the busiest part of life. You can be with people with all emotions. You're deciding what I'm going to think and feel inside. Of course, that's a journey. But the world is telling us now I have to reclaim my inner authority, my inner kingdom, and rule that, and not just be so vulnerable. Many times I think it's amazing. We are so educated in this world. In this room, I'm sure just the breadth of knowledge and education is incredible. Yeah. But internally, we are so uneducated. Don't you find that a paradox? If I have a negative thought, I've got no power or knowledge. What do I do with chronic negativity or dislike self, disapproval of self? This chronic human habit today of just putting myself down. We just bow down, the thoughts take over, and you're hopeless, you're no good. And then we take ourselves into such a dark place. We've lost our power, and spirituality is really reclaiming that sense of inner power. It's a high destination, yeah.
You said something that it kind of made me pause. You said about we've drained our spirituality. You know, our spirituality has been drained. Can you highlight for us what are the things that we are thinking and doing that's contributing to my drained spiritual power?
Yes. You know, for me, because what I feel spirituality is this gentle observation of yourself. You're just watching what's happening. And I feel so much of our happiness, our beauty and joy of life is that we get so caught up in the weaknesses, the defects, the mistakes, the behavior of others. And it's almost like we are so affected by each other. And so as a result, we create this tsunamis of negativity and hurt feeling, bad feeling. I feel so much of this spiritual study is about feelings. And my challenge to myself is to live in this world and keep my feelings clean. And even if someone, you know, doesn't really have love or respect for me, I think that's one that hurts us so deeply. That's the absolute vulnerability of the human spirit. But to get over it, you know, and have good wishes, because I think with the power of your mind, you can change dynamics in relationships. You have seen, Jenna, in the Brahma Kumaris, we had all these older sisters. It's a women-led organization. I saw them change people with their minds so many times. People who are down, people who are chronically negative, love, goodwill, it shifts. Of course, you have to have that spiritual power, but that's what is the relationship with the divine, gives you that power to, personally, I feel, how much do I measure my ego is by how mentally critical I am of everybody, you know, always picking faults, always seeing what's wrong. It doesn't make me feel good. And to me, to see the value in another is the greatest gift you can give to another human being. In other words, when you come in front and you see their beauty and you tune into their beauty, it's almost like you've given a gift and they feel spiritually uplifted.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to be in your own self-respect to be able to do that. But I think it's very powerful.
Mhm. Can we emphasize a little bit about your sharing of a clean heart? Even as I mention it, how does it make you feel that you imagine yourself a living human being with a clean heart? What comes to your mind immediately? When's the last time you heard somebody in a conversation say, "It's time for my heart to be clean"? When was the last time you heard that? And where do I begin to clean up my heart after you have lied, cheated, abused, or maybe I lied, maybe I cheated, maybe I did the abusing. And then I woke up one day and realized if I had known better, I would have done better. I just didn't have the power to do better. And now I have to find a way to clean my heart out for my own mistakes. Share with me and all of us one thought process that can help me to start the journey of cleaning up my heart.
Yeah, it's a, in a way I feel, and I was talking to one of my friends on the spiritual journey once about our attachments and our dependence. And we felt our greatest attachment is to my story, what's happened to me, how I've been treated, what people have said, what people have done, and it's stored in the heart. And when I store rubbish, and I identify with that story, and that's how we all are. I mean, it's the way life is today. And yet that just, I think it cripples me in so many ways. And I feel, in a sense, spirituality gives me a new story. It's not to deny things happened that weren't good, but if I keep them alive, my heart is not clean at all. And it sort of, I don't know, it corrupts the beauty of my potential. And I think that I feel a lot of, for me, the more I experience the highest quality of love, the love of God, I really feel we can look at that whole story and say, well, it wasn't right. It wasn't good, but I'm going to let it go for my own well-being and my own happiness. It's like cleaning my heart is forgiving myself and even those who've contributed to the pain. And I feel, a lot of us feel forgiving people when they've been so their behavior so inappropriate and bad. But I feel it's possible to say, for my peace of mind, I don't agree with what happened. I don't agree with the behavior, but for my peace and for me to move forward, I'm going to let it go and move on. So it's not like, because sometimes we feel we're saying, well, what you did was okay, when it definitely wasn't okay. I can say it's not okay, but I'm going to move on now. And the power, I really feel the power comes from above, without a doubt.
In my early 20s, I had the fortune of having a leader, a director, who was drunk in his position. You ever had a manager who's absolutely intoxicated that they're the boss? You ever had one of those? Hands up. I know it's Washington, D.C. So I think they're in every office space. And if you know what I mean, they're just drunk with their role of authority over you. And this person knew of their authority and they made sure they told all the other authorities things that were a defamation to my character. I came to find out about it through others telling me to be careful of this person. But I also could feel it at that person when they would come in front of me, they would not have, "Oh, how are you, Jen?" Wasn't that feeling? It's like, you know, um, I remembered how debilitating it was, even though I thought I was so qualified. And honestly, Charlie, my heart was so pure in what my job was to be done, right? However, it wasn't pure at the level that, the saints have it, but I was a work in progress. Long story short, I carried that hurt in me for at least 20 years. And I'll tell you how it looked I was delicate but strong. I questioned if they were right, if there was an element of truth in what they said about me, because I was still so young, growing in my journey. And I carried this kind of a hurt victim sense of self, which was a vibration. Externally, I was keeping myself active and making sure I got my good karma in, my good deeds in. But internally, I would sense like, was they right? Am I really like that? And I remembered how delicate I was privately between me and God. We knew how delicate I was. But if you were a good judge of character, you could see in my eyes I was very delicate, even though I was very strong. How did I overcome it? Good deeds. I had nothing else that I could pull from that helped me to convince myself that I wasn't what she said I was. And the only thing that I could turn to was keep doing good, Jen. Your good deeds. That's it. That's nobody has power over taking that away from you. And I learned how to overcome the challenge of that relationship that was such a dagger by performing good actions. Would you say that's also a means of healing one's vulnerability and pain of the past?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's interesting what you were saying, wasn't it? That, even though the defamation is not right, we're so much into self-doubt, we think maybe it is true. How I think that cancer of self-doubt, why is it so profoundly deep? How have we become so spiritually vulnerable that, I remember once, I'm diverting a little bit. I gave a meditation course to a stage manager of one of the world's great actors. And she was telling me that this person that all of you know, he would perform in front of thousands and they loved him. And it was encore, 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 encore. He's so brilliant. She said every single night he'd come backstage say, was I good enough? Did they like me? And isn't it amazing? Have you noticed how you can do something well, and yet that self-doubt is just chronically sitting in the back of your mind, just always sort of taunting you. And
where does it come from?
Body consciousness. It's just this. I often think of it. The inner world is like a tree, a seed, a trunk, branches, and leaves. Your thoughts are the leaves, the end product of the tree. But what's feeding the leaves is, the branches, your mental, emotional patterns, the subconscious, the trunk. Freud said like 80 to 90% of our behavior come out of the subconscious. But the seed is my sense of identity. And in a way, when my whole sense of self is built on a falsehood that I'm a temporary body, it's corrupting the entire inner world, consciousness. And the heart of that is this incredible lack of self-respect. And so that's why we build that facade. We all build a facade to meet the world. But we all know that little vulnerable me behind the facade, that little vulnerable me that is sort of frightened that the facade will drop and people see that I'm not as good as I look in that way. And but when I sow the seed that's truth, that I'm an immortal, eternal, non-physical, conscious soul that's lived before this body and will continue. And I not only believe it, but I start to experience it. It influences the whole tree. Yeah. And on the top, then the thoughts are much cooler and calmer because the thoughts are being produced from truth, not from the falsehood that I'm the temporary body. And that's why it penetrates. And I feel the whole contemporary culture is built on this lack of self-respect, this sort of sense of inferiority.
Would many of you think in detail about your power of discernment, that there's good in you, you're good, but there's that question mark, Because if I think I'm too good, am I going to move into an era of such arrogance that it turns out to not really be healthy for me? What is that fine line of the balance where I accept that I'm good, but I'm also aware I've got a lot of work to do? What's the best way to go about finding that balance?
I think to me, one of the main, when someone has self-respect, the expression of self-respect is real humility. We don't need to prove ourselves. We don't need to be anything, we're quite comfortable. And you think when you meet someone who's genuinely humble, your love automatically is pulled. It's such a beautiful quality. And yeah, so
Yeah, they disarm you.
that's a good word. Yeah.
When's the last time you met a humble person? No, but really, in your sphere of connection, when's the last time you met a humble person? It's interesting, right? Because it's the natural power and strength of the soul. And yet we're not even used to seeing examples of humility anymore. And at times that when I do meet somebody who's humble, I might say, oh, they're weak. We are actually giving prizes to people who show how greatly arrogant they can be. Yeah, I mean, really, this is how upside down we've become. And so I think when we're looking at this conversation today, where do I find power at a time when I feel so powerless? As you're saying, it really starts with an internal conversation. So some of you might have heard we had a fire at the ashram and I passed with honors. And I hope that didn't sound arrogant. But I'll tell you why I think that is so important to me, because when you're on a journey like ours, right? We have had the fortune of helping millions of people over all these years. Okay, fine. However, sometimes you really don't know if you're living what you teach. Because when you're in a moment of tragedy, then you see what's at the base of your character. So after the fire, I noticed, and my greatest gift from the fire was 10. You live by what you teach. Good girl. Keep going. Honestly, I took the crisis and it helped me to see things that I wouldn't have seen. It was huge for me. Not to say that I felt I was being deceitful to myself or others, but again, you never know what those thoughts are when it's challenged, in that moment of crisis. And so from the fire came a realization, as Charlie was saying, it is when you're tested the most that perhaps your greatest growing curve is emerging. So, as a country, there's a part of the country that is being tested tremendously. And I believe there is another part of the country that is also being tested, even if they don't believe it or see it. Everything is murky, nothing is clear anymore. How can we develop discernment when nothing seems clear anymore? What's the method of creating the power of discernment so I don't get deceived? I don't put myself in situations where I have to pick up the dirt along the way.
Detachment.
Mm.
Detachment is one of the greatest virtues because you have an objectivity. And in a way, I think a byproduct of self-awareness is becoming a detached observer. What does that mean? It means I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm close, but I'm just observing through my eyes. It's like I, the soul, observe, because when you're attached to a perspective, attached to my opinions, I don't have an objectivity to see with clarity. And in a sense, dependence creates huge bias in my thinking. I don't really stand back and be objective. And in a way, when we meditate, what are we doing? we're just becoming, letting go attachment to all the labels of my body and becoming, you know, that soul. And the more you become soul conscious, almost automatically, because you become detached. I often had this saying for myself, am I an absorber or am I an observer? Because we're absorbers today. We absorb all the stuff. And my mind gets so enough, so much anger and resentment and hurt and all this sort of stuff. But does it help me and does it help anybody? But when you're detached, you can still see the situations, but you think with clarity. And to me, it is a natural byproduct of spirituality, this detached observer state. It's so important. Otherwise, we get caught in all these, these upheavals and of opinion and stuff that goes on, and then we become a part of, I don't know, disturbing others. It's, you're still engaged with life, because in the English language, that word detachment is not a good word because it sounds cut off, disconnected, uncaring. But spiritual detachment, I call it detached and loving, or detached involvement. You're present, but you're really having clarity on what is happening. The more you're detached, you can be objective. And I think it's a great value in the world today to be like that.
I think it'll save your life, actually, because it's so much what's going on. We have the fortune of having the great Reverend Sylvia Sumter with us from Unity of Washington, D.C. And one of the things she had mentioned to me once was, if anybody looks in your eyes and it looks like you're disturbable, they will disturb you. And I thought that was so good. So then I started to look in the mirror and go, you disturbable girl? Like you have to look in your eyes and check these things, because in a way we're all energetic with each other. So we can sense things in each other. Right. And so I think sometimes when someone is trying to disturb me or devalues my worth or disrespects me, I think we walk away with the feeling, I really need to raise my vibration of my own value. Whereas why in the world would that person have the courage to say what they said to me? Right? And so I think this is what's going on. We're like in this washing machine, this global washing machine, and so much dirt is coming up from all of us with each other. And I think if we can understand the dirt that's coming out of us to each other, it's not my dirt. I know we're all washing. Wait till I get clean. I'll show you. There's a different way of dealing with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like Brother Charlie was saying, if you can see the good in the person, that's really your effort. That's your homework assignment. That's how you can gain your power. So I'm going to take a moment if anyone has any pressing question in their heart that they would like to ask our divine, revered Brother Charlie from wonderful Down Under.
Easy for us to understand. Well, it's still hard for us to understand, but easier than it is for children. But is there a way to help them understand? Some simple ways to share it with children?
I would actually think the kids are smarter than the grown-ups nowadays, but I won't say anything.
But I feel it's a beautiful space to want children to grow up with values or even learning meditation. But I find when we do it automatically, if I'm a parent, it will automatically radiate to the children. And one of the things I've loved about the Brahma Kumaris, it says, when we change, the world changes. And actually, when I really take the authority back in my mind, and my children observe me not reacting like I used to, even speaking, what they hear me speak, if I'm yelling about people, saying these people, these are terrible, they're absorbing all that. So to walk my talk is the most powerful thing to do for a child, really, to be a living example. Albert Schweitzer or something said, somebody, that example is not the best form of leadership, it's the only form of leadership. And I really believe that, you know, what people want today is leaders they can see that they're acting from a place of benevolence and love, you know, rather than just self-need. And leadership is all about me. It's rather than, and the real leader is the server, you know. But, you know, I know that, you know, I know in Australia that so many schools teach meditation to kids. It's just so common. And they've got really clever ways of doing it now that sort of, because kids' minds can wander in what, 0.2 of a second? No, that's probably too long. 0.1 of a second. It keeps them engaged with stories and things, but helps them learn methodologies to keep themselves a bit calm. Yeah.
One of the things that I've done with the youths that are around me, sometimes they would come and say, Sister Jenna, look at this on the iPhone. I go, it's pretty good. Can you design an app for me? Because if you're going to be on the iPhone, can you do something for service? So I do emphasize with the youths the importance of service, that there is something very valuable in just knowing that people are going through a lot of things. And if you can help someone, it's a good thing. And I've found that it has made them purposeful, a little bit more sensitive to their parents and what they're going through. That's always helped. Any other questions for today? Please.
I was wondering if you have any guidance for me, as I have an adult child and our relationship is, you know, it's separate. And, you know, time waits for no one. And so I pray, but we're at an impasse and I just don't know.
You know, it's such a difficult thing, isn't it? Someone who's so close to you. And but you know what I feel? We feel each other's thoughts. And when we have a mindset with all the good intentions, we're constantly correcting them. You should be like this. Don't behave like this. Don't go. You know, like actually, it's from a place to protect. And yet they keep picking up these thoughts of disapproval, that you're not good enough and this sort of thing. And really, I think to see your child as a soul and give love and have good wishes, the power of a human mind of clean feelings is incredibly powerful. You can change anybody. I honestly believe that when you have good wishes. I was working in a place long time ago, and my boss was a army sergeant, former army sergeant, and he was the archetypal sort of big bloke, you know, and everyone was scared of him because he would really ball them out. And I just took it on as an experiment, because we were talking about these things, to sort of, I refused to buy into that sort of really dominating. And honestly, I couldn't believe he just became like a puppy dog. And underneath that incredibly tough exterior was such a sweet person. And I just saw, but he felt that he had to meet the world with this really blokey sort of thing, because he was feeling so vulnerable internally. So I feel the power of our thoughts. Actually, the most powerful thing in relationships is feelings. You know, 80 to 90% of our communication impact is your face and your vibes, not your words. And so if you come in front of your child, experiment with a loving face and good feelings. And just, it will take time because that relationship is so close, but experiment. And I think you'll find it might just open the door. When that soul knows no matter what, they will be loved by you. Everyone needs love today. I just think there's just a desert out there. And we all need, no matter who we are, we need that love and belonging. And when we get that, I think actually that people can soften.
And I'll tell you that after a while, you do build a story in your head about the difficulty of this relationship. And it's like when you sign up for, you ever go into like Netflix and they have genres, they have comedy, what did they have? Comedy, action, adventure, sci-fi, you know, family, whatever, right? Drama, yeah. That I never watch those, right? And then what happens is that the relationship you have recorded is in a particular drama, like a particular interpretation. And something that has helped me with challenging relationships, whether I've passed 100% or not, what has saved me, and I continue to use it time and time again now, is I call God Baba, which is the supreme light. You'll all see it at some point in your journey, if not now, later. But I would say, what does love want me to do here? And instantly, that first thought was always going to be right for me. It has never failed me. And either the love is, Jen, give her time. Jen, leave it alone. Jen is not worth it. Jen, give good wishes. Jen, you know she's struggling. Let it go. And that's what love always would tell me what to do. And it's just saved me in so many occasions. But I'm so sorry that you're going through that. And especially as a mother, when you've got so much to go through, but try to even practice saying, I'm not my name, I'm not my gender, I'm not my role, I'm not my title, I'm not my religion, I'm not my body, I'm the soul within. This is also the same. Many of you knew my mother of the Brahma Kumari, Sister Gita. She passed away last year. Nobody even knew she was my mother. Our relationship was so pure, soul to soul. So when Brother Charlie was saying, try to consider yourself that immortal soul and speak to that soul, because really, she's not even really your daughter. She is God's child. And maybe he's, you know, the universe or the drama has offered you an opportunity to learn to love so much, because maybe that energy has come to show you the only way for you to go now is love, Mom, because I just can't help me. Do you understand? Okay, all right. One last question before we close off with the meditation, Suchi.
One, learn to cultivate, and which can mean that one is emotionally invested in someone or something, and detachment at the same time.
Yeah, because that's why detachment increases your capacity to love. Because when you're detached, you can love people when they're good, they're sweet. But when they go through their stuff, you don't allow it to influence you, so you can maintain. And I feel that's one of the most powerful ways of helping people go through their stuff, when you keep, and that's true empathy in a way, because you're supporting them. There's a guy I know in London. I started my meditation journey in London, and he gave himself the title as the most negative person in the world. That's quite a title. And when you just get into that really dark place where you're just so cynical about absolutely everything. And he said he'd go to the meditation center, and Daddy Janki was there, who many of you know. And he said she could see beyond his story, and she could see his value. And she refused to buy into his really angry. And he just said that her constant good vision changed him. And if you met this person, you cannot meet a more peaceful person. He's just the living embodiment of a peaceful human being. So to me, detachment, that's why it's such a misunderstood word that I always think, can anyone think of a better word? Because it's actually living in your self-respect and not allowing the world to drive your mind, but you're deciding what you think and feel. And then you have a benevolent feeling for everybody in that space.
I remembered one of our brothers in the Brahma Kumaris, Anthony Strano. He had coined an idea of detachment, calling it respected space. I'm just going to invite you to think about that for a little bit. It's respected space. So you respect them in as well as there's a space in between, giving them time. And what I'd like to do is just invite you to try an experiment before, if I'll ask Brother Charlie to take us into a meditation. In our advanced classes, which we do every morning in the Brahma Kumaris, there's one thing that came up a while back. Can you try to love everybody the same, or imagine if you loved everyone in this room the same? You'd be detached. Try it now with your mind. I love everyone in this room. I love everybody the same. That's detachment. And the moment you waver in that formula, and I like Kenny more than I like Sichu, then you're attached. Now try again. But I love everybody the same. Then I'm detached. Give it a try. It's interesting. Practice loving everybody the same. You'll be less troubled. May we ask you to take us into a meditation?
You may. Let us sit quietly and put down phones and bags, and if you feel comfortable, keep your eyes open and gently rest them on the image of light in front. Inner journey is the journey to reclaim my inner strength by rebuilding my inner world by knowing and experiencing who I am. Just visualize the eternal self, a minute spark of light. I, the soul, I sit lightly in the forehead and I act through the costume of my body. Or I move beyond the labels of my body. I return to a sacred space within. A calm mind, a silent mind. I am a peaceful soul. peaceful soul. And in this sweet place of soul consciousness, third eye, and visualize the form of the divine, a radiant jewel of light, emanating a purity, a truth, a quality of love I will find nowhere else. Not a belief, an intellectual concept, but the lover of the soul. Naturally, gently rest your mind in this ocean of love. And allow yourself to be completely loved. Live stream this love into the core of your being. Nothing will make me healthier. Nothing will make me stronger than the quality of this love. Just feel it healing you, caressing you. And in this space of sweet feeling, observe how you feel about yourself. Automatically, my sense of self-value rises. The greatest power to heal the relationship with the self is the purity of this divine love. If each morning I wake, and before I think about yesterday or what I have to do today, sit quietly, reconnect with the eternal self, and allow myself to be loved by the divine. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Brother Charlie. You know, there are nights like these that remind me there's still so much hope in our humanity, and there's so much hope for our future, right? And if you keep taking these concepts and these ideas with you, you might not score 100% all the time, but the fact that you got 5%, 10%, it eventually gets to 100. Just don't turn your back on these concepts. If you are tired of being tired of not being your best, then everything Brother Charlie has said is going to definitely reverse that. If I could just break that addiction and that pattern to the cycle of waste into wonder. You know, like recycling. You know, they recycle plastic and make it into something wonderful. And in the same way, if we could just transform our wasteful thinking into something more constructive. Example, that shouldn't be gray, it should be pink. Oh, that's gray. Maybe it's got some reason. You have to learn to find a way how to change your thinking. Instead of it being judgmental, critical, complaining, comparing. We have to break the cycle now. I mean, the world is at one of its most pivotal moments in human history where we are the heroes. We will be the heroes of our own journey. We're in a marriage, we're with kids, we're with friends, we're with colleagues at work, and we now have a chance to change the way we see ourselves in these relationships. And they're challenging. They're challenging because they're different. They don't match my energy. Then you have to make a decision. How are you going to function? How are you going to go? Okay? Did everyone enjoy their time tonight?